shown a pecuniary interest in item 6.2 and on the preceding bylaw 15.4, I believe. Minutes of the previous meeting for January 18th. Any errors or omissions or business arising? Seeing none, we need a motion for the minutes. Councillor Daigle, seconded by Councillor Teal. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. At this time, I would ask for a motion to adjourn our regular meeting to proceed into public meetings, including Committee of Adjustment. Councillor Daigle, Councillor Irwin, all in favor? Carried. First item is the notice of public meeting to consider application MV1-2023 located at 10321 Petty Street. The owners are Brian and Callie Scott. I'm not sure if anyone's here from that. Seeing no one, go ahead. Stephanie. They are here virtually. Oh, do we have them on now? Let's just wait for them to be connected.
Good evening.
Good evening. Can you hear us all right?
I can, yes.
Okay. All right, Stephanie, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm just going to share my screen to get a map up. All right. The purpose and effect of the application is to seek relief from the North Middlesex zoning bylaw in order to permit the construction of a storage shed with a height of 6.7 meters or 22 feet. Whereas the maximum height permitted in the agricultural small holding zone is 5.5 meters or 18 feet. And it is noted that accessory building height is measured from the average finished grade to the top of the roof peak. The applicant has advised that they are requesting the additional height for storage purposes, as well as to aesthetically be more similar in appearance to the existing house and roof grade. The structure is proposed to be located in the rear yard, approximately 74 meters or 243 feet from the front yard, and 3 meters from the rear and the closest interior side lot line. Staff have evaluated the application in accordance to the 4 tests of a minor variance and are of the opinion that the variance is considered to be minor in nature. It is an appropriate use of the lands. It does meet the intent of the North Middlesex official plan, as well as the North Middlesex zoning bylaw. The notice of the application has been circulated in accordance to the requirements of the Planning Act, and staff received the following comments. The county engineer has reviewed the application and has no comments. AuSable Bayfield Conservation Authority noted that the property does not fall within the regulation limit. As such, no concerns. The North Middlesex Public Works Department has noted that the property is on a private water service, but there is water infrastructure along the front of the property should they wish to connect in the future, subject to fees at the time of connection. There is an existing driveway off of Petty Street, and it is on private septic system and are not assessed to any municipal drains. And the North Middlesex Chief Building Official has no objection to the application, but did note as part of the building permit, it would need to be verified where the septic system is in terms of setbacks from the accessory building. So it is recommended that the application be granted, subject to the following condition, just that the proposed storage shed be limited to 1 story in height, which is in line with what is being proposed today. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. At this time, would the applicant have anything to add?
No, I do not.
Okay, thank you. Look, any comments from the public on this application? Seeing none. Questions from the committee? No questions. We have a recommendation in front of us. Moved by Councillor Keogh, seconded by Deputy Mayor Hodgins. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Stephanie. This time we'll go to 5.2. And that is a notice of public meeting to consider application MV 2-2023 located at 187 Else Craig Main Street. And our applicant, are they online as well?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Casey, we can barely hear you. Your volume sounds low, maybe?
How about now?
That's good.
That's better.
That's good. Okay, Stephanie, go ahead.
Thank you. So the purpose and effect of the application is to seek relief from the North Middlesex zoning bylaw in order to permit a lot frontage of 17.05 meters or 56 feet for the severed lands of consent B1 2023, whereas the minimum lot frontage in the residential commercial RC zone is 18 meters or 59 feet. Additionally, the application is to seek relief in order to permit a minimum interior side yard setback of 1.8 meters or 6 feet for the retained lands, which are highlighted in yellow on the screen, and that's again in relation to consent B1 2023, whereas the minimum interior side yard setback for the RC zone is 3 meters. The subject lands are located at the southeast corner of Elsa Craig Main Street and James Street within the urban settlement area of Elsa Craig. The subject lands are 1,678 meters squares in size and contain a single detached dwelling and an accessory building. The subject lands are serviced by municipal water and sanitary connection and have an existing access off of James Street. The lands are subject to consent B1 2023, which was denied by council on January 18th of 2023. And the purpose of the consent application was to create an infill lot for future development purposes. Staff have reviewed the minor variance against the 4 tests within the Planning Act and are of the opinion that the variance is considered to be minor in nature. It is an appropriate use of the land, and it does meet the intent of the official plan and the zoning bylaw. The notice of the application has been circulated in accordance to the Planning Act, and staff received the following comments. The county engineer has reviewed the application and has no comments. Asabo Bayfield Conservation Authority noted that the property falls outside of their regulation limit, so there's no concerns. The North Middlesex Chief Building Official has reviewed the application and has no objections. And the Public Works Department had no additional comments for the variance that were in addition to the consent ones that were received. So it is recommended that the application be granted. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. At this time, the applicant have comments?
I have nothing to add to Stephanie's report and recommendation at this time.
Okay, thank you, Casey. There's nothing written. Any public comments on this application? Seeing none. Questions from council? Councilor Irwin?
Sorry. I wonder if we could defer, Your Worship, a decision on this as a motion, given that the council decision of the previous meeting is being appealed and we can deal with both matters at the same time.
Okay. Are you making that a motion?
I'll move. So moved.
Is there a seconder for that motion? Councilor Keough? Discussion on it before we vote? Councilor Canellison?
Thank you, Mayor Rob. Yeah, I would agree with that motion. I do believe it's a valid point to wait and see how the appeal evolves and before we make a decision on this process.
Okay. Other comments? Seeing none, we have a motion in front of us to defer. Sorry. All in favor? Carried. That is carried. Thank you. Thanks, Stephanie. We're looking for a motion to adjourn the Committee of Adjustment and proceed back into regular council. Councilor Daigle, seconded by Deputy Mayor Hodgins. All in favor? Carried. Next, we have a public meeting, and that is for drainage. And that is to consider the engineer's report for Calistine Drain number 2. Joanne.
Mr. Mayor and members of council, in front of you is the report for meeting to consider of the engineer's report for the Calistine Drain number 2. And the recommendation is that council receive the final report for the Calistine Drain number 2 dated January 6, 2023, and it's prepared by R. Dobbin Engineering Incorporated. And that the first sitting of the quarter revision on behalf of the Calistine Drain number 2 be scheduled to be held on March 1st, 2023 at 4:45 p.m. The Calistine Drain number 2 is approximately 367 meters. It's an open channel excavation with some enclosure of the open channel, and then they're going to install 750 millimeters of concrete HDE pipe and 2 catch basins.
Okay. There's any written submissions on this?
No, I haven't
No
received
written
anything.
submissions. So there's a chance now for public comments on this application. Seeing none, council questions? No questions from council. We have a recommendation in front of us. Moved by Councillor Daigle, seconded by Councillor Nerda. All in favor? Carried. Thank you, Joanne. Next one is 6.2, meeting to consider engineer's report, Cameron Drain E and Branch E and Branch A maintenance update. And we do have a declaration of pecuniary interest on this one.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, Honorable Mayor and members of council, in front of you is the meeting to consider the engineer's report for the Cameron Drain Branch E improvements and the Cameron Drain Branch A maintenance update. So for the Branch E, we're going to abandon part of Branch E. A new branch is going to be installed across Elginfield Road from the south to the north, and it's going to outlet into the the Thirlwall Award drain. And then the Cameron Branch A maintenance schedule needs updated as well. So the recommendation is that council receive the final report for the Cameron Drain Branch E improvements and that the Cameron Drain Branch A maintenance update dated January 6, 2023, prepared by R. Dobbin Engineering, and that the first sitting of the quarter revision on behalf of the Cameron Drain Branch E improvements and the Cameron Drain Branch A maintenance update be scheduled to be held on March 1st, 2023 at 5:55 p.m.
Thank you, Joanne. Any questions on this from the public on this? Seeing none, questions from members of council? No questions from council. We have a recommendation in front of us once again, moved by Deputy Mayor Hodgins, seconded by Councillor Canellison. All in favor? Carried. 5 in favor. 6 in favor, pardon me. Thanks, Joanne. Delegations, we have Watson and Associates. Estelle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Attending virtually is Daryl Abs from Watson and Associates. Daryl will be giving us a brief presentation in regards to how Bill 23 will affect North Middlesex as a whole. Daryl, are you there? And there's Daryl. Daryl, will you be sharing your screen for your presentation?
Yes, I can do that.
Good evening, sir. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
Good evening. Thank you very much. I will share my screen. One moment. Okay. Can everybody see that?
Yes, we can, but your volume is very low. I don't know if it's an issue on your end or on ours.
How's this?
That's better.
Better?
That is better.
That is better. Thank you, Daryl.
Perfect. Thank you. So thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Council, for having me here this evening. I'm here to speak on the impacts of Bill 23, more specifically on your development charge policies, your rates, and your development charges bylaw. I will just ask for your patience. Apologies, I just tested positive for COVID a day ago, so I may have to mute for a second if that's okay. So with Bill 23, just providing a brief overview of the timeline, you can see it was introduced October 25th, 2022, and passed relatively quickly, just over a month later, it received royal assent and was in place. One thing to note is that there was a standing committee that did receive presentations and delegations on the impacts of this bill. And our firm did make a presentation. Gary Scanlon, managing partner at Watson, did make a presentation to the committee. Unfortunately, our concerns weren't incorporated into the final version of the bill. One thing I wanted to note just at the outset, and I'll talk about it as I get through each of these items, is there are draft regulations required for some of these changes. And so they're not yet in effect, but they can be in effect at any day. The province just needs to introduce the regulations and then give notice that they're changing the regulations to the act. So just something to take note, they could take effect. Our firm always monitors this and will definitely keep the municipality apprised should this changes come into effect. And so I'll speak to the changes to the Development Charges Act first and go through kind of point by point what the changes are and more specifically how they impact the municipality. And then at the end, I'll just briefly touch on the changes to the Planning Act for parkland dedication, and then finish off with any questions from council. So under the previous Development Charges Act legislation before the Bill 23 came into effect, there were some mandatory exemptions. And so one of them being you could add an additional unit in your residential dwelling. And so for a single detached home, you could add up to 2 units. So let's say 2 basement apartments or 1 basement apartment and 1 apartment on top of a garage. And then for all other residential, you could add 1 apartment. Now what it says is, so it's the same for a single detached home. You can still add 2 apartments, but you can also add 2 apartments for a semi-detached home or a row house, which, a townhouse. So again, these apartments can be, 2 apartments within the home or an apartment within the home and an apartment on top of a garage or in a garden suite. And so that's really the main change with these additional residential units, or some municipalities might refer to them as accessory units. And then they've maintained the exemption really for apartments, where you get 1 unit or 1% of the existing units in a rental residential building. And so what does that really mean for the municipality? For single family homes, there's no change. But for other types of developments, so you can think in a subdivision, if there's multiple townhomes or semi-detached homes, and a lot of them start adding these additional units, they're not going to be required to pay a development charge. But with all these new people, with all these new units, you're going to require additional water and wastewater capacity to service these new people and units. And so if they don't have to pay a development charge for their share of the capacity, well, then that has to be funded through water and wastewater rates. Similarly, with active transportation or road infrastructure, again, if you're adding all these people, there's higher demand on the roads. If they're not paying their share of the requirement to expand or enhance the road network, then again, that would have to be funded by taxpayers. And so this exemption is currently in place. So as of November 28th, when the legislation passed, this exemption has taken place. So any additional residential units that come forward, they will be exempt from development charges. They've also removed housing as an eligible service. I just wanted to note this as it is one of the changes. It doesn't impact the municipality specifically, as you currently don't have housing services in the bylaw. So that's it's not really an impact to the municipality. They have added new statutory exemptions and mandatory exemptions that have to be provided, whether or not they're in your development charge bylaw. And so I think this is, really the main thrust of the legislation. This is really what you've heard in the news on, we want to incentivize affordable, attainable units. And so they've introduced these exemptions, affordable rental units or affordable owned units, where the rent or the purchase price is no more than 80% of the average market rent or purchase price. And this will be defined by a new bulletin that will be published by the ministry. However, at this point, it's unclear what the bulletin will look like, and I'll speak to it on the next slide. Then they've also introduced an exemption for attainable units. And what they've said is this is different from affordable units, and it's different from rental units. And they're going to define it in the regulations. And so we don't really know what this means or how they're going to define it. So it's unclear on what type of units would receive this exemption from development charges. So with affordable, attainable units, as part of this, the municipality shall enter into an agreement. So you have to enter into an agreement with the developer to ensure that it remains affordable or attainable for those 25 years. On top of that, you can utilize inclusionary zoning through the Planning Act to require affordable housing units. And if you require affordable housing units, those are also exempt from development charges. So I'll stop there. Affordable, attainable, and affordable housing units as part of inclusionary zoning. All of those exemptions are currently not in place. The regulations will have to be released. The ministry will have to prepare this bulletin and keep it up to date. And as of yet, they have not implemented these exemptions. The final one there, nonprofit housing. This exemption is currently in place. What it is these type of developments previously, they were allowed to pay their development charge over 20 years. So if they came forward with their building permit or their application, they'd pay their first component of their development charges in the first year and then equal installments over a 20-year period. What they've done now is they've said all these housing units are exempt. And so we understand, the point as we're trying to incentivize affordable housing. But the challenge here from a financial perspective is, exemptions from development charges, because these are growth related infrastructure required to support these new developments. Anything that's not funded from the DC because of an exemption needs to be funded from taxes or water, wastewater rates. On top of that, the definition of attainable is unclear, and we don't know what the bulletin looks like. And so one of the things with the bulletin is if we're looking at 80% of the average market price or rent, well, that can vary widely depending on where you are, even in the municipality, but also within the county or provincially. And so we're not sure how in depth they're going to be analyzing these kind of changes in market rents and purchase prices. And we don't know how often they're going to be updating them. So it potentially opens you up to exempting a lot more what they deem as affordable versus what you might deem affordable or attainable through your official plan policies. On top of that, because you're going to have to enter into agreements to ensure these units are affordable or attainable, it's going to increase the administrative burden on staff to track these things to ensure that all of a sudden they don't change or sell the property and now it's no longer affordable. And so, as I mentioned, the affordable, attainable, and affordable units as part of inclusionary zoning, none of those exemptions are in place yet, just the nonprofit housing exemption. As part of the development charge background study process, one of the things we have to do is we have to look at the historical level of service, or what did you provide over the last 10 years of inventory? What's the replacement cost of that inventory? we do a mathematical calculation, and we come up with this cap or this upper limit. So when we go in to do the development charge calculation, we can't include more than what we calculated as that cap or that upper limit. So previously, we had to look back historically over 10 years. Now the legislation's changed and they've said you have to look back over 15 years. Okay. And if you want to take a look at what those tables look like, it's Appendix B to the municipality's DC background study. And so what does that mean for the municipality? What we've done is we've gone back and we've looked at those calculations from the 2022 background study. And luckily, with the calculations we did in 2022, it actually wouldn't have had an impact because we weren't maxing out on those service standard calculations. In some instances, such as fire, actually, the service standard would actually increase. And that's just due to the timing of when the expansion occurred for the fire station. And so what many municipalities are seeing is this is going to potentially reduce those kind of service level caps. And so when you do the next background study, this will have to be taken into consideration, this 15-year service standard. And if, say, you do have capital expenditures that would take you to that maximum, it might actually reduce your ability to get to that maximum what it would have been under the 10 years. Now we have to look at those 15 years. So it's not a direct impact today, but when you undertake your next DC study, you'll have to undertake these calculations in this way. Now, in terms of the capital costs that we can include in the development charge background study, there's been a couple revisions here. So first one is the cost of land. So the cost of land for infrastructure was allowed for all services except for parkland. And that's because you get your parkland from parkland dedication under the Planning Act. So if you were to build a road, if you were to build a facility, you could include the cost of the land in the overall capital cost of the project that you would include in the development charge calculation. What they've done in the act is say they can prescribe services for which land is restricted. Now, to date, they haven't done that. Thankfully, that hasn't been incorporated. But with changes to regulations, the province only has to provide notice that they're changing the regulations, and then that's it. They can just go ahead and change them. So at any point, they could step in and say, you can no longer include the cost of land, let's say for roads. The second piece in terms of the capital costs is the cost of studies. So they've completely removed the ability to recover the cost of studies, including the development charge background study. And so for the municipality, again, we mentioned land is a significant cost, and so it would, it wouldn't be great financially if they've taken out your ability to recover that through development charges. But with studies, one of the things that we kind of presented to the committee was that these studies are really required to understand and identify the capital needs required to accommodate the growth. And they're really to understand the servicing required, which establishes the supply of land, which we need for new development. And so, that's one of the things we pushed back on at the committee. Unfortunately, they still went ahead and removed it. But for the municipality, since you passed your DC bylaw before the bill came into effect, you can continue to collect for studies, and you can continue to fund them through development charge funding, all the way up until you undertake your next DC bylaw. So for studies, it's kind of status quo until you do your next DC bylaw. They've also introduced this requirement to phase in a development charge. And so we'll undertake the calculations, we'll come up with a charge, and then in year one of the bylaw, you could only impose 80% of that charge. Year two, 85%, 90% 95, and so on until you get to 100% at year 5 forwards. And so what this means is, what they did was they kind of backdated it to any bylaws that passed as of January 1st, 2022. So unfortunately, the municipality did pass their bylaw in 2022. And so you're required now to phase in the development charges that were calculated. So since I believe the bylaw was passed kind of mid-year, so anything after November 28th, 2022 has to be phased in, charged 80% until the second year of the bylaw, then it's 85% and so on. And so looking at the growth we anticipated in the background study and the phase into these rates, we're looking at a loss of approximately 8% of the anticipated revenue over the 5-year period. And this is relatively consistent with what other municipalities have been saying in their reviews and other reviews we've done for municipalities. It's generally in the range of that 9 to 10%. And so, the main issue with this is, again, if you're not funding, if you have to exempt the charges or phase in the charges, the amount that you're not collecting from DCs needs to be funded from other sources, be it water, wastewater rates, or taxes. And so the big issue with water, wastewater, stormwater, and roads is a lot of this infrastructure has to be installed and paid for by the municipality in advance of the development coming on. And so over time, what we're going to see is this is either going to delay the construction of the infrastructure, which then delays the construction of new homes. And it's going to have a negative impact on the taxpayer or ratepayers that are going to have to fund these losses. Another change that they've made is they've extended the life of DC bylaws. And so previously, the development charge bylaw had an expiry date of no more than 5 years. So after 5 years, it would automatically expire. What they've done now is extend that to 10 years. And what they've said is they want to give greater certainty and less shocks of increases to development charge rates over time. Looking at the municipality's bylaw, it does include an expiry date. And this is important because the way the act is worded is it says that a DC bylaw would expire 10 years after it comes into force, unless something is otherwise provided for in the bylaw. So since the bylaw does provide for an expiry on April 20th, 2027, we would perceive that this remains that expiry date. Now, this isn't necessarily a bad thing. One of the things we're noticing right now is municipalities are experiencing significant increases in construction cost and tender prices. And so what we've observed from other municipalities, easily 40% increase in construction prices. But when we look at the development charge index, it's only gone up about 15% per year. And so the charges, because they can index every year by this development charge index, they're saying that, the charge will go up 15%, but your costs have gone up by 40%. And so now this is going to lead to a gap in the funding ability over time. And so for many municipalities, it's still advantageous financially, even with the phase in, to update your bylaws sooner if you have significant increase in construction costs. So another kind of incentive they provided in the act is a discount for rental housing. So a rental housing development, which is defined as it has 4 or more units, and all of them are designated for rental. They get a reduction based on the number of bedrooms they have. So 3 or more bedrooms, you get a 25% reduction in your GC, 2 bedrooms, 20%, and then 1 bedrooms and studio apartments, 15% reduction. So, again, further discounts just place additional burden on the municipalities to fund these reductions. And one of the things we see as an issue here is the rental housing discount doesn't have the same requirements as the affordable attainable in that they have to enter into an agreement. So if they don't have to enter into an agreement to ensure that these remain rental, there is a chance that a developer might build a rental development and then after a couple of years convert it to a condo or sell it and convert it to a condo and avoid having to pay the full DC for those units. So, this is a reduction that's currently in force. So any rental housing development that comes forward as of November 28th, 2022, so last year, will get this discount. Now, in speaking with staff, and this also applies to the nonprofit exemption, there haven't been any applications for these types of development. So you haven't had to give these exemptions or discounts. And there's currently no applications in the process, as I understand. So there doesn't appear to be an immediate financial impact. But if you do start seeing these coming forward, then again, you would have to honor these exemptions and discounts. Just a couple more changes. So previously under the development charges legislation, there was certain types of development, rental housing and institutional developments. They pay their development charge in installment payments. So over 6 payments over 5 years. And then there's also, if you apply through site plan or zoning bylaw amendment, your development charge rate is frozen at the time you submit your application. So with both of these types of developments and payments, the municipality does have the ability to impose interest on the rate freeze, also on the installment payments. Now, there was no maximum previously prescribed. Some municipalities, I won't say who, may or may not have pushed the envelope on that one. And so the province came in and prescribed a maximum. Now that's set at the average prime interest rate plus 1%. Currently, as of yesterday, the average prime rate was 6.7%. So you could impose an interest rate of 7.7% as a maximum. Okay. So this is in force as of November 28th, 2022. Now, currently, the municipality doesn't have an interest rate policy per se. So I think that's one thing, speaking with the treasurer, that will be brought forth soon for consideration, whether you go forward with the maximum interest rate allowable under the Act, or if you want to provide some lesser amount. And then finally, for the Development Charge Act, you're required to allocate 60% of the monies sitting in the reserve fund at the beginning of the year for water, wastewater, and roads. And this is really coming from some of the rhetoric we've heard from the development community that municipalities are sitting on piles of cash. I'm sure you don't feel that you're sitting on piles of cash, but that is, kind of what the development community has been saying. And so as part of these changes, they've said you have to spend or allocate 60% of the monies. So this can be done through your capital budget process or through the annual treasurer statement. The treasurer can then note at the end of the year how they've allocated 60% of the beginning balance to specific development charge projects. Okay. So I know there's a lot of changes, and I'll come back to questions once I'm done. I just wanted to briefly touch on similar changes to the Planning Act with respect to park location. So with parkland dedication, I noted earlier, that's not allowed to be included in the development charges because you get it through this parkland dedication. And so what they've done is they've tried to align the rules a little bit more with the DCs. So what they've done is introduce this rate freeze that I mentioned earlier. So if you apply through site plan or zoning bylaw amendment, the amount of payment in lieu will be identified when you submit your application. There's exemptions for those additional units, affordable, attainable, nonprofit units. And then there's also that requirement to allocate 60% of the monies at the beginning of the year to specific projects. The base provisions of the Planning Act in most municipalities outside of GTA use kind of the base provisions. For residential development, you're allowed to require 5% of the land to be dedicated for parkland, or the value of 5% of the land as payment in lieu. In higher density situations, you are allowed to use this alternative approach, which previously was you could require 1 hectare of land for every 300 dwelling units, or the value of 1 hectare for every 500 dwelling units. And this makes sense when you get into high density environments. If you could see like a low density subdivision, it might make sense to take 5% of the land area. But if you think of a high rise development in, let's say, Toronto, and you have thousands of people in this little square plot of land, it makes sense that you wouldn't want 5% of this little square of land. You'd want to maybe base it on the number of units. And so what they've done is they've cut this in half for both the dedication and the payment in lieu requirements, and then put a cap on that. If you want to pass a parkland dedication bylaw, you now have to do a parks plan. And then additionally, and probably one of the most impactful is it kind of allows encumbered lands to be included as land that's dedicated. So when a developer dedicates parkland, they can kind of identify what lands they want to give you. And your only recourse then is to go to the Ontario Land Tribunal and dispute that. Okay. Just to wrap up, I know that I'm sure you're all aware there's this kind of letter from the ministry to AMO, and it did speak to kind of, you know, what their purpose is, right? And they want to exempt these fees for affordable nonprofit and purpose-built rentals, and they've identified that there shouldn't be any funding shortfall. They're going to be launching these audits for select municipalities to understand how the reserve funds are used and how the DCs are administered. And they've kind of said that they want to ensure keeping municipalities whole in terms of, you know, the losses from development charge funding. What that means is yet to be seen. I don't think any of the audits have taken place yet. And it's unclear what it's meant to be made whole. From what I hear, it sounds like they're asserting that with new development is new tax revenue, so that should offset the DCs. But what we've seen in our work doing financial impact analyses for municipalities all across Ontario and Canada is that with new development comes new operating costs, which is what the taxes really go towards. And you'll just lose that DC funding. So thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, Council. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right, thank you very much, Daryl. Questions from council? Who wants to start? Councilor Irwin.
If we can go back to the first deck of slides, slide 7. And you've identified the provincial government is still working on definitions of obtainable and affordable. Now, once those definitions are in place, will these new financial parameters be retroactive to November, or will they be in place once the definitions are in place? Because I've noticed most of these new financial parameters are retroactive to November. Will these also be retroactive?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, as I understand, they won't be. In the legislation currently, if you look on the website, the act says on a date to be proclaimed. And so, as I understand, it would be as of the proclamation date, and it wouldn't be retroactive.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, follow up.
I have one more question. If we can go to slide 14, please. Now, in this slide, you've identified potential revenue loss of 8% because of the phase-in period for development charges. Then you've identified other potential costs for services like roads, sewers, etc. Do we have any sense of what that dollar amount may be?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the 8% is looking at the DC revenues anticipated if there
Yeah.
was no phase in versus with the phase in.
Right.
What we've noted underneath is just that an overall commentary of, with the loss of this revenue, you might not have the money to build the road, to build the pipe, to build the treatment plant. And so what that's going to do is you're going to wait until you have the money, and it's going to delay your ability to invest in that infrastructure.
Okay, so all right, there's no formula in place where we can assess in advance these costs.
That's correct. What we've done here is an assumption, but it really depends on the rate of growth. And so, because if you have a lot of growth in the first year, they're going to take advantage of that 80% of the rate. And so potentially that loss could be more significant. We are heading into more of an economic downturn, it appears. So perhaps if development slowed, it might be more on the back end and then reduce that revenue loss.
Okay, thank you. Other questions from council? No other questions? Daryl, I have one, and it has to do with that 80% average. You're saying that figure isn't, we don't know that figure yet. I did hear some numbers, I think 2 weeks ago at a meeting where there was a presentation, and they said affordable housing was under 572,000. And I said, I'm not sure where that number came from, but that was the numbers that they gave. And the rental number was 1,035 a month or like less. And that was considered affordable. Well, if I look at that as the affordable housing, if they're using Toronto and all these large centers, of course they are, that a lot of the housing that is built within rural Ontario is going to fall under affordable housing, even though it isn't affordable at 572,000. But that is my fear in this, that actually a lot of the housing that is going to be built will have no DCs to them. Am I worrying about nothing, or what's your opinion on that?
No, I think the worry is well founded, and I think that's part of what we tried to present to the committee is saying, what does this truly mean? And we're really hopeful that the ministry's taking a deep dive into this analysis, and I believe they are, to try to figure out how this is going to apply to municipalities outside of the GTA. Because all too often we know that municipalities outside the GTA kind of get lost in the shuffle, and we don't want to see that happen. So one of the things that was brought up, and I know it's brought up at a lot of the the municipal finance officers group meetings and such, is how is this bulletin going to be released? Can we get some more details? We're trying to get more details from the province. But I don't think they've come to grips with that, because as you've correctly stated, it can't be one number. It has to be most likely multiple different numbers for different areas of each municipality across the province. And I don't know if that was necessarily thought of when this legislation was introduced, because typically when we think of affordable housing, municipalities will state that it's 30% of your income, right? And so how do you apply 80% of the market when really affordability is really based on personal income? So it's yet to be seen. I don't think those fears are unfounded, and I completely agree with you.
All right, thank you very much, Daryl. Any other questions from council? Seeing none, Daryl, thank you. It was a lot of information and I really appreciate it. This bill, I've read it several times, but this helps to show some of the impacts on our municipalities going forward. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Okay, at this time, we have departmental reports. Let's get started. Report from our executive assistant. I think Jaden, you're taking this on our 2023 larvicide application. Go ahead, Jaden.
All right, thank you, Mayor Ropp. Good evening, council. The 2023 larvicide application program is an annual mosquito abatement program that's been ongoing for several years. The purpose of this program is to reduce the number of adult biting mosquitoes through aerial application of a larvicide material. The program is recommended to be completed by Pestalto Environmental Health Services, Inc. at an upset cost of $49,375 plus HST. It's noted that the overall cost depends on whether 1 or 2 aerial applications are needed, and this is dependent on weather conditions. That is, wetter weather conditions may require a second application. It's noted that in most recent years, only a single application is required, and those costs are in the order of around $25,000. So there's some additional information within the report and a copy of the final report from last year's program. The recommended motion are that council receive the report entitled 2023 Larvicide Application Program, and that council direct staff to retain Pestalto Environmental Health Services, Inc. immediately to begin North Middlesex's larvicide program. Thank you.
Thanks, Jaden. Questions from council? So any questions on this? Councillor Keel.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. Jaden, I just have one question. Probably have to deal directly with Pestalto on this. Looking at the mapping that they've done in past years, is that the exact route or the exact area they're going to apply this larvicide again, or will they expand the area due to a wet spring?
Thank you for the question through the mayor. I don't have the answer to that question specifically. I believe they're going to be following the same route, but there are notices that are sent out as well, and property owners can object to the application of the material on their property, so that can change the application as well. But I can look into that a bit more with Pestalto and get back to you on that.
Thank you. I do understand that it'll be probably just standard like they've done the last 4 years where they do send out notification. I guess what my question is, will they come out and do an inspection before they do an application just to see if a wider area does need to be broadcasted?
I think maybe we'll have to get that answer for you right directly from them. I think I do know they do a walk. As we know, they do a walkthrough to check the right time to do it. But I think we'll have to ask Kevin from.
Yeah, certainly we could get in touch with them and get that information prior to.
If you can send that through to all of council, that would be great.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Okay. Other questions? No other questions. We have a recommendation in front of us. Moved by Councillor Daigle, seconded by Councillor Teal. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. The next one is our fire chief.
Thank you, Your Worship. Mr. Mayor, members of council, what you have in front of you is a report requesting endorsement recommendation of 5 policies that we've prepared, reviewed by the fire committee at our January 12th meeting, and we would like to be reviewed by council. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions from council? I would just note that these were all items that were brought up at the fire committee and were talked about on the committee. But if there's any questions? No, we're good with it. We have a recommendation in front of us. Councillor Daigle, Deputy Mayor Hodgins, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thanks, Greg. That was easy. Don't expect it every time though, right? Next is our drainage superintendent coming again for the abandonment request for the Dixon Jacoby drain. Go ahead, Joanne.
So, Mr. Mayor and members of council, in front of you is the report update for the municipal drain abandonment request for the Dixon Jacoby drain. And the recommendation is that council accepts the abandonment part of the Dixon Jacoby drain, which includes the pond, the berm, and the surface outlet pipe within the report dated December 30th, 1988, under bylaw 14 of 2023.
Questions? You're going to let Joanne get away with 3 reports and no questions? All right, we have a recommendation in front of us. Moved by Counselor Daigle, seconded by Counselor Nerda. All in favor? Carried. Thanks, Joanne. Next is our Public Works Manager, and that is for the capital budget reallocation. Vance. Good evening, sir.
Before you this evening, I have a report requesting the reallocation of the 2022 capital budget, where council approved funds approximately $300,000 for the purchase of a new single axle plow truck. And I'm here presenting this report and recommending that instead of a single axle plow truck, that an ag tractor be purchased instead. In my report, I've detailed reasons and to support that recommendation.
All right, thank you. Just before we go to questions, this is similar to what you're using now, Craig.
Absolutely, Your Worship. It's 130 horsepower ag tractor. It's got a plow blade on the front of it. And essentially that services the community of Elsie Craig right now. And we're looking to do a similar situation for the community of Park Hill.
Okay, thank you. Questions from council? Councilor Cornelison.
Thank you, Mayor Rupp. Vance, you make a really good argument. I was impressed with your argument. It makes a lot of sense. My question for you though is, in your argument, you indicated that the single axle truck was not used in the off seasons at all. But my memory serves me correctly. We specifically used that truck for smaller tasks over the summer months, where the bigger trucks had difficulty accessing certain properties or locations. Would you still need a smaller truck then, or how would you deal with those issues?
Through Your Worship, essentially, we could try to find alternate means of getting that work done. Essentially, any of the work, like it occasionally, I believe, was used for cold mix, application of cold mix and getting into tighter areas that a tandem couldn't fit for, perhaps for hauling. Public Works Department does have smaller units, like a smaller dump trailer and equipment like that we could try to utilize. And we would kind of alter our methods to get that same work completed. My main point there too was that for the expenditure, I'm presenting an option that would allow us, the municipality, to use that machine all year round. But I hope that's answered your question.
It does answer my question. Thank you very much.
Other questions? Councilor Irwin?
Just a quick question. There's no financial difference in capital. It's exactly, it's a wash.
Through Your Worship, the estimates that I've received right now, it is a little bit, my estimates right now for the budget it's a little bit less. However, it's all predicated by, of course, once we go to procure it, it may, but at face value would be a wash.
So it would fall within our existing budget that we've had allocated.
Absolutely, Your Worship, members of council, it would not exceed the existing allocation of 300,000.
Okay. Any other questions? Councilor Cornelison.
Thank you, Mayor. What specific brand of tractor would you be looking at?
Well, we currently are using a John Deere 6130, which we are very happy with. And through the procurement process, we would be hoping to acquire a machine that's essentially similar to that, a similar brand if we could. However, I will follow our procurement policy to see what we can do there and work within the guidelines provided.
Thank you.
Okay. Other questions? Seeing no questions, Deputy Mayor Hodgins.
So I assume that that tractor will come equipped with the plow on the front of it. That when you're bidding it, or there'll be the plow, snow plow, different too.
Absolutely, through Your Worship. The estimates that I've received here so far are this machine would become equipped with a front snowplow blade. It will become equipped with a roadside mower that would go with it as well. We currently already have the gravel dragging attachments for it that would fit on there. And it would also come equipped with a salt hopper that would run across the back of the unit for salting the roads. So that the estimates that I've received are for all of that.
All right. Any other questions? I want to congratulate you for thinking a little bit outside the box here, because it was just, you know, the request was for the same thing that we've always used. And I do know that the tractor works very well in Ellis Craig. It turns quicker. I think it's a little quicker actually than truck because of the time not wasted turning around and stuff. And so I commend you for that. So yes.
Absolutely, Your Worship. That's what the operators have found so far as well. It's a much safer piece of equipment to use. Our communities are have very tight roads and tight corners and so forth. So so yeah, thank you kindly.
Excellent. Other questions? Seeing none, we have a recommendation in front of us. Moved by Councillor Nerda, seconded by Councillor Irwin. All in favor? Carried. Thanks, Vance. Thank you. Our next one is from the Chief Building Official. And we have Arnie Marsman here. Welcome, Arnie.
Thank you, Mayor Rupp. Good evening, Council. It's nice to see you in person. It's been some time.
Yeah.
I am here tonight pleased to present to you the fourth quarter building report for 2022 and also the year-end report summary for 2022. And what I'd like to do is just step through the report, and if you have questions, by all means, interrupt me and we can answer them as we go along. In summary, last year was a very good year. It was, in one way you could say it was average, but it was good in that we brought in 30 new homes to North Middlesex, an increase from 19 in 2021. And the slowdown in economic development that a lot of the region has seen really hasn't impacted North Middlesex as much as other municipalities. So you've done well weathering that storm. And I see this year generally going well as well. Cautiously optimistic about some developments that we have in the area that will be going ahead with some pre-sales that some builders have. So I think it looks good right now, cautiously optimistic. In the report, I have a few summary tables. Table 1 is sort of a comparison of the municipalities that we represent. So as council knows, we provide building inspection services for 5 municipalities. Adelaide Metcalfe, Southwest Middlesex, North Middlesex, Lucan Biddulph, and Middlesex Center. This is a comparison, table 1, of the activity that we see in those municipalities. In total, we've in 2022, we approved 1,146 building permits, totaling about 300 million in construction value. That is down somewhat significantly from 2021. A large impact was found in Middlesex Center, where residential development just sort of came to close to a standstill in the second half of last year. So we were down in Middlesex Center considerably with new houses. But overall, it was generally a good year. All the bills are paid. The revenue was decent for all the municipalities. The second table is a comparative table for North Middlesex. One of the questions the councillor had regarding development charges. If we took off 20% of our development charges from last year we collected 347,000. So it would have been a loss of about $70,000 in development charges revenue last year if it was 20% off. So that's maybe an example of what we might see this year coming up. And again, it's a good comparison of economic activity, of construction value, permits issued, development charges collected over the last 5 years in North Middlesex in table 2. Table 3 is a bit more of a detailed breakdown on the type of building permits that we've issued for the year. First column is just the fourth quarter, what we found, and then the year totals are in the next 2 columns of total permits to date and the total construction value in each of those categories of construction. Table 4, towards the end of the report, again, a comparison just of the number of dwelling units approved last year compared to previous years. And in table 5, I like to break this down in Middlesex Center, so I thought I'd do it in our municipalities as well as the settlement areas and how the new houses kind of break down where the activity is that we're seeing for new homes. So table 5, you see Park Hill, we brought in 17 new homes last year. Else Creek 6, and in just general rural areas, there were 7. So we'll see how that changes over the coming years and where the activity is. Besides that, just verbally, a couple of projects we're working on this year. In the first half of the year, I'd like to bring council a building bylaw that kind of speaks to more recent building strategies. A building bylaw is required in each municipality. It speaks to types of inspections, types of application forms that we need. There's been a lot of changes since all of our building bylaws were passed. Our building bylaw right now still says you need 2 sets of drawings, 2 sets of paper drawings, and we've gone all electronic now. So we'd like our building bylaw to reflect that. Also, a few other strategies that I can point out to council when I bring it back. I like to do that, like I said, in the first half this year. And also our staff are working on a brochure for additional residential units. Over the last 2 years, we've done brochures on deck guides and accessory building guides. So residents can look those up, maybe design their own accessory buildings, their own decks. With the province's Bill 23 and the encouraging of additional residential units, we like to put together an information brochure of how you can establish your own basement apartment, or how you can establish a residential unit in your detached garage, what would be required. We like to put that together because we anticipate a lot of questions in the next 6 or 8 months, just as the regulations fall. It would save staff a lot of time answering a lot of questions, and it would help the residents understand things more.
Have you had a number of requests already on those type of possibilities?
Not a lot.
Not a lot yet?
I'm surprised. I am, and I'm not surprised. It's a slow time right now, and the dust is still settling a bit over the new bills.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
But it should pick up, though. We expect it.
Okay. Questions? Councillor Keough.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. Arnie, I just have one question for you. On table 3, you have several points there outlined. Granny Flats and garden homes, do they fall under the new single family dwelling, or do we have an allotment for them?
We'll, through the mayor, we'll likely create a new category for those.
Okay.
Because we would like to track what additional resident units we find coming in.
Perfect.
We do report to Statistics Canada the number of new dwelling units, and that would be part of our reporting. We just haven't seen them yet. So we might as well start accounting for them right away. So that would be a new category.
Thank you.
Other questions? Councillor Cornelison.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. Arnie, good report. I like it very much. And I'm impressed with the work you guys do. And I was really impressed with your brochure. I'm really looking forward to getting that, because it's going to have a lot of valuable information. My question for you is, and you made a comment that you're optimistic and that you think the construction or the development will continue. However, you also indicated that in the Middlesex Centre that died off in the last half of the year. With the increase in interest rates, have you heard anything, feedback from the development industry where they see this going with the interest rates continuing to increase?
Yeah, through the mayor, not a lot of positive thoughts or insights from the development community right now. I have some builders that think they're going to be unemployed for a couple of years potentially. There's not a lot of people knocking on doors. We have some developments scattered around the county that there's pre-sales. We have a community coming into Ilderton. I forget the name of the senior. It's a retirement condo we have in Park Hill here. Gold Leaf.
Gold Leaf.
We have a Gold Leaf development coming into Middlesex Centre.
Nice. They
have people lining up to get in. So all pre-sold. That's going to move quickly. So we do have little clusters like that. Merritt subdivision here. I understand most of those houses are pre-sold already. So that's positive, and that people are sticking to their purchases. So things like that are looking good. But the general overall feel is that it's going to be slow, at least for the first half, 3/4 of this year.
So it sounds like the Bank of Canada is undermining the Bill 23, build homes faster policy.
They seem to be contradicting each other. Yeah.
Other questions? Other questions? Arnie, it seems that we still have people who want to downsize, right? So I can see those condos, townhouses, whatever you want to call that, that semi-detached or rural housing. I can see that still having a market. And I know that I'm pleased to see that we have development starting in Elsa Craig now, that they're starting to move dirt. And I know that people are looking forward to that type of housing, because we are lacking that here. And as you mentioned with Gold Leaf, they could have probably put in 3 times as many as they put in and had them gone. That's a very nice development.
Yes,
So,
it is. And then you're right, through the mayor, there's a lot of demand for the small, affordable type of units.
Yeah.
And downsizing.
Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much, Arnie, for coming. Appreciate it. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. We need a recommendation to approve the report. Counselor Keough, Counselor Daigle, all in favor? Carried. Thank you, Richard. Our next is the report from Jaden on the Park Hill sewage lagoons and the potential third-party opportunities. Jaden.
Okay, thank you. So we're joined here tonight as well with staff from the Ontario Clean Water Agency, also known as Aqua. We have Aaron Law, who's joining us virtually, as well as Rod Dupuis, Indra Maharjan, and Susan Budden. So they'll be here to help support this discussion and help answer questions. So we do have some slides as well, which we'll jump into in a little bit, but I'll give a little preamble here to go along with the report. So over the past couple of years, the municipality of North Middlesex has been in discussions with a third-party company, Wessick Inc., regarding potential revenue generating opportunities at the existing Park Hill Lagoon site at the north end of town here on Park Hill Drive. Wessick's made previous delegations to council in October 2021 and April 2022 with proposals to purchase or lease the lands at the lagoon, as well as proposals to clean sludge out of the lagoon cells. In December 2022 and January 2023, Wessick met again with staff to review an additional proposal for the lagoon site. The current proposal is at a high level. It's to transform one of the 2 existing lagoon cells into a biosolids storage lagoon that would receive and store biosolids from North Middlesex and other wastewater treatment plants until it could be land applied. It's noted that Wessick has identified the details of this proposal to be confidential, and they have requested that specific discussions regarding the proposal be discussed in closed council meeting only due to the proprietary nature of the information. Therefore, I would request that any specific questions about that proposal, which was circulated to council prior to this meeting, be reserved for a closed portion of this meeting, which we have scheduled for later on. So following that meeting with Wessick in December and January, staff at North Middlesex have been working closely with our partners from the Ontario Clean Water Agency to evaluate the proposal and determine next steps in exploring these potential opportunities. The first step in the process is to bring this information forward to council, noting that the previous members of council who sat in the last term were involved in a lot of those discussions and delegations, but we do have some new members here as well. So we want to bring this information forward to council for information and to solicit feedback from council regarding these opportunities. And pending council support tonight, a next step that we would look to move forward with would be meeting with the Ministry of the Environment to review whether this proposal or a similar model would be acceptable to them. So if we could launch the slides, we'll just walk through those. So these just provide some additional discussion and some more information within the written report, and then we'll just kick it off into questions and discussion with council and staff. But the objectives that we're looking at with these potential models for maintenance and the future of the Park Hill Lagoons would be to leverage the existing Park Hill Lagoon infrastructure to help North Middlesex achieve its wastewater infrastructure needs for the Park Hill community. Currently, the lagoon system in Park Hill has limited ability to treat municipal sludge, challenged by proposed future flows, by all the proposed development and sludge accumulation within those lagoons. A new mechanical wastewater treatment plant is planned, and we are seeking funding for that project, as it is at about a 90% design stage. And we have been going back and forth with the Ministry of Environment for the environmental compliance approval for that new facility. The lagoons are retained for wet weather flow and sludge storage, and we are exploring alternate delivery models to offset financing needs for cleaning and future operation of lagoons and the new mechanical plant. So the proposed concept, what we'll be looking at a high level without going into too much details about the specific proposal, would be working with a private partner and having them financing cleaning and of the lagoons, cleaning the sludge out and charging tipping fees for bringing sludge in on a long-term basis. Aqua would continue to operate the new mechanical wastewater treatment plant and lagoons. We would still seek public funding for the new mechanical plant and lagoons. There'd be a term limit, rate of return, and other details, which would be further negotiated with the third party. And a financial model would be completed and a business case. Those things would have to be done as an early step before moving too far along. And also what the proposal would look like would be transforming one cell into storage and the other one for a biosolid storage facility. And then that material would be removed and land applied once a year. And the south cell of the lagoon would be for sewage only. Some of the benefits of the proposed concept would be less treated sewage discharge. Lagoons are cleaned and increased. The lagoons would be cleaned and we'd have increased treatment capacity. There'd be a cost offset, potential revenue source, treatment plant until new wastewater treatment of the new facility is ready. We'd still have treatment in the meantime. Regional sludge storage for neighboring municipality, potential federal funding. Some of the challenges and I guess risks would be the cell volumes would need to be agreed. There's would be trucking associated with the proposal to bring new material in, potential odor concerns. And then there's the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks approvals and permitting for the revised facility, treatment capacity, and management of the biosolids. So some additional next steps, these are also identified within the report that was provided, but we do want to discuss further with the interested third party and look at the proposal in more detail, see where there's flexibility on the proposal. Right now, everything's still very early and they brought a proposal to us and we've reviewed it. But we want to get into more of the details with that. As noted previously, we want to seek comments from the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks to see whether this is even a feasible option to be looking at. We want to determine how the proposal affects wastewater servicing of expected growth in the short and medium terms after further refining the proposal with the private party and the ministry. We would look for procurement options. One of those being potential requests for expressions of interest to solicit interests from the industry and other third parties that may have other ideas or models or may want to participate in this model. We would want to document or develop a document to outline roles and responsibilities of each of the parties, being the municipality, Ontario Clean Water Agency, and the third party private stakeholder. And also look at more of the details about contracts, financial model, technical requirements, and operations model. We would certainly want to have a robust public engagement process and have a lot of communication to share this potential plan with the public and understand what their concerns and questions are about it. And of course, we would want to include AECOM as a stakeholder in these future discussions, as they are the engineering consultants working on the detailed design of the new wastewater treatment facility. So as outlined in the report, the the current recommendation within the report is to that council receive this report for information, and the council direct staff to meet with the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks to review and discuss the feasibility of implementing a biosolids storage facility at the Park Hill Lagoon site. So as noted, we do have the Aqua team here available to help answer any questions. They have a wealth of knowledge, and I hope it's a good discussion, and looking forward to your questions and hearing more about it. Thank you.
Thanks, Jaden. Who wants to start? Questions? Councilor Nelson?
Thank you, Mayor Rob. I guess my first question is,
Yes.
I guess my first question is at the outset, we talked about some confidentiality and to have this additional discussions and closed. So what is the extent of what we can discuss or that you're willing to discuss here now?
So I believe the piece that we have to be cautious about, I think, is the specific proposal that was circulated to council. So when it gets into, I think, the numbers, the financials, and those details that may be proprietary to what WESIC has recently proposed, that was their request. So I'd like to err on the side of caution in reserving those specific questions to the closed session. However, I think the more discussion we can have in open meeting, that's information that's available to the public, that'd be great. So if a certain question comes up and I or our friends from Aqua think that it may be potentially proprietary, we may just err on the side of caution and hold
Yeah,
that.
we can just refer it, that's a question that to the closed portion if that happens.
Thank you. Then I'll begin. My first question, of course, is odor. I did visit the site in Sarnia, and there was a cold, blustery day when I was there. There was an odor. I don't know what it would be like on a hot, humid day. I'm assuming it would be compounded several times on those type of days. So how do we mitigate the odor given the proximity of these lagoons to several of our residential homes?
So I think odor is a nuisance that comes with wastewater. So we can't avoid that. However, there's steps that can be taken or will be taken to mitigate the odor. Now, again, we can't control the wind direction and wind blows, right? The existing developments or residents around the lagoons, we can't move those. But however, there's a technology available, there's a process available, and Aaron is our technical expert, and I'll ask him. But as we discuss this in the next step, if the council gives us a go ahead, there will be a separate plan to put odor management plan. Obviously, Sarnia is a good example. What they did there, how the operations was done in the lagoon, we can take that offline. There's a long discussion around what happened wrong, why the odor was there, even if that site itself was an odor generator, or there was neighboring other facilities that were generated. So there's a lot of debates going on around who actually to blame on the odor. Obviously, everybody will look at the wastewater plant for sure. It's easy to blame, but there will be other sources. So they are finding that they are resolving those issues on Sarnia specifically. And that's why our operations team is heavily involved and will be heavily involved to ensure that we mitigate the occurrences of those odor chances. Again, there will be no guarantees that there will be no odor issue, but not to that extent, because on that particular site, they bring different kinds of material. But in our case, our plan is to just bring municipal wastewater, not like food or dairy or stuffs like those. And then the way they operated that lagoon, where they receive the incoming material, how it gets processed, there were some improvement areas in that process, which we were aware. Again, we are not involved in that, but again, sitting on the outside as industry leaders, we are keeping a close eye on what happened, what were the lessons learned, so that, those instances. Aaron, do you want to jump a little bit on the odor?
Sure. One of the things to make sure. Yeah. One of the things that for this proposal is the fact that in the other site is that they were bringing in, hauling in cake biosolids. And so it was, like a soil. And so one of the issues that they had there was that there was no liquid layer on top, and that led to some challenges. So with this proposal is one of the first approaches they're going to do is that they're looking at taking some of the liquid from the lagoons as it treats the water, to use that as a water cap, and then create that water cap and then start adding biosolids to it. So that's one way of mitigating. Like Indra said, is that there are some technologies that can be used to, mitigate some of the odors through, mists, things like that, and then things added to the liquid too.
Thank you. I have two more questions. My next question is on the routes the trucks will be commuting and utilizing. Given the location of these lagoons, and I'm assuming that you're going to be looking for farmland to apply the material on, the most direct route to some areas would of course be up Parkville Drive up here to the intersection by the dam, and then turn either north or south. So you might be going through town, or certainly be going through part of a residential area in either case. At the outset of this discussions that we had, we were assured that that would never happen, that the trucks would never go anywhere near a residential environment. Is that still the case, or would you then go and take an excessive detour to avoid coming to that small distance up here?
So again, we haven't looked into the details of how the truck's going to drive and which route, but obviously the key objective of the trucking will be to mitigate or minimize those interactions. Like, it is up. We will work with the staff to ensure that the trucks doesn't come randomly. So there will be a schedule, connect with the operators, there will be scheduled time. In Stratford project, when we worked on that, we come up with a trucking policy, starting with what type of truck they're going to come, how they're going to come. And once they offload the material, they will be cleaned or not cleaned. So, depending on the material and all, and the timing, when are they allowed to come, and then how long they are allowed to speed of the truck. And all these can be built into those operational plan. Again, we haven't reached that stage. And based on staff feedback and the council feedback or a public feedback, we can determine which route is the best route without interacting a lot with the public and disturbing the local vibe of the town. So those all can be detailed, and we have the right to decide how we want to do this thing. Again, so these all will be included, and even we can even say if we want electric truck or gasoline trucks. In Stratford, we have a policy where we have no idling policy. That means when the trucks are offloading the material for like 15-20 minutes, they have to turn off the engine. So we look into such a minor details to minimize the nuisances to the public. There were fixed schedules that the trucks can come in. They can't come all at the same time so that it's queued up. So we can work all those details in that document called truck policy, order policy for order. Those all will be built into those operational discussions down the road.
Well, good. You touched on another question I had, was the scheduling and the timing of the trucks offloading in the middle of the night. So you touched on that. My final question, and I'll pass it on to my colleagues in council, and that is, will you ensure that there's a commitment from local landowners to accept this material prior to bringing sledge in? Because if it overflows and it's there and it's not moving out, then we're going to have a problem.
No, and that's a really good question. We as Aqua, we are a promoter of circular economy concept. What does that mean is, we generate the material as a human being, and that material has to go to the farmland, right? Rather than landfill. That's what we have been promoting for many years. And that's the whole idea, is the third party, now in this case, Wishok, or any third party that's going to come and then, work around this model, it's mandatory for them that this material needs to go to the farm. And then what we have also said is possibly the local farmers to start with. Now, if the local farmers can't take it, don't want to take this material, then only we'll look at a little bit, around Essex County or Leamington area. But we believe that the volume can be consumed here so that the nutrients going to go back to the farmland, not far away from the local town. So that's why we also talk about a little bit of regional storage option. So the biosolid storage is a huge challenge in the province of Ontario. And Aaron is leading one of the study for the province, not just this municipality. So you have two options. Either you build a big concrete tanks to keep the biosolids, until the weather is good, the farmers are ready to take it out and spray on the land. But as you all know, with the climatic events, the weather is so unpredictable now. It can rain around the time when you need to take it out. So what are you going to do? And like you said, Councillor, if you keep it for longer, the odor will be more and there will be other hassles. So do you want to build multiple tanks? No, we don't recommend that because that's a lot of cost. And what if you don't need those tanks? So that's why we are building these different options so that, you know, the flexibility to manage that material at a minimum economical way and environmentally sustainable is to rely on some of these partners and have these avenues open, multiple avenues open. So what we are proposing is we have the lagoon infrastructure. The town needs the mechanical plant, but when we move to that direction, it's going to take time. So our first goal today with this model is to explore this model in a way that you have the wastewater treatment capacity needed for the town until that new plant is ready. And when the new plant is ready, we are not going to forget about this very valuable infrastructure, but this infrastructure will be a part of that new plant as a biosolid storage for one lagoon. And then one lagoon will be used as a receiving station for your own material and any other municipal needs around the municipality. So that's where how the investment will be recovered by the private party is charging some fees for that offloading those materials. Thank you.
Next, Deputy Mayor Hodgins.
Through you, Mayor Rob. Let's just say I've dealt with this in past years through another municipality.
Yeah.
One time when they were dumping it, will there be a random check if we are accepting sludge from another municipality, wherever, of checking truckload as to what's in it? You know, as to contaminants or anything? Is there a random check on that? That's sort of one of my first questions.
So through your worship, Deputy Mayor, it's a very important question. And again, I will defer it to Aaron for regulatory information, but before he goes, yes, there will be procedures in place to have those test certificates on those materials. Obviously, if it's coming from the wastewater treatment plant, somebody's wastewater treatment plant, obviously those compliance needs to be met. And when we apply to the farmer's land, there's another regulation that's going to reflect, which requires us to measure those. So, Aaron, do you want to touch a little bit on the regulatory requirements around testing, sampling?
Yep, there's testing and sampling, like Indra said, that has to happen at the plant to verify that this material is suitable for land application. So the testing is, laid out in the approvals and the plans for the agricultural land application. So there will be testing so that we'll know whether the material that's going there is suitable for land application. And then some of the details as we work out, like how this would work, is that, we can create a testing protocol to see, we could check things coming into the facility. So it's some of those details that need to get worked out. But there's definitely there are the rules that are in place, provincial rules for testing and quality criteria for the material.
And also, if it gives some comfort, Deputy Mayor, is we have a rights to say these are the materials within our set.
Yep.
So they just can't pick up somewhere and bring it, to the plant and dump it. It will be a pre-identified source. It will be estimated volume. So let's say Lucan, just a random example. We're gonna bring from Lucan. We're gonna bring from Huron Kinloss and how many trucks, right? So those all will be, I would say, estimated, and we will not be accepting or will not be allowing to accept any material that we think gonna negatively impact our performance of those lagoons.
That's that question, if I may, Mayor. The other part of it is the disposal of it. And one of the things also I remember when it was wanted to be delivered to the farmland, the farmers were through the environmental, had to have a permit to put it on their farm, and the environmental, Ministry of the Environment
had to monitor to make sure it was applied properly, but they had to have a permit ahead. I'm just questioning, number one, whether, there is a benefit to some farmers see the benefit in the fertility of this coming onto their land. But if they have to be known, number one, if they have to get a permit ahead of time and be assessed to get this, it's not something, you just, okay, I want it. You're going to deliver this tomorrow? No, you'll have to have a permit. It's just a
So this, yeah, and it's a very valid question, right? I mean, there's always I would say based on our experience, majority of the farmers see the value. They have seen increase in crop yields and other things using these materials. Obviously, when we talk about the materials, there's different things that makes these materials. So I'm talking about municipal wastewater materials only. But there's also a requirement to work with the, like Aaron said, there's a regulatory requirement for farmers to work with NASM plan and whatnot. So these third-party partners we are talking, they are in this business. They work with the farmers. It's not that we are working with the banks only that gives the money. So we are recommending to work with these partners whose bread and butter is this business, working with the farmers, disposing the materials in the farmer, and also collecting the materials from the source, like commercial, institutional, and municipal. So, and then in this case, this third party is also bringing in the financial capital. And I will be very upfront here. The reason they are coming to us is they see the value in this infrastructure, and a lot of entities are now going into this model where instead of going to the landfill, I want to put this material into a beneficial use. So these companies have seen a lot of growth in their demand from the customers. But then, as I said, there's a very less destinations they can take these materials and make it work, right? And one is lagoons, and we have the lagoons. So that's why they are very much interested in this municipality. Is there's assets, and they know that we are considering to move to the mechanical plant. So they are trying to make their business work. They are getting a lot of demand, but they can't go and take this material because they have nowhere else to put. And that's why they see this value of spending $3 million, $2 million in this facility with the town, so that they can grow their business to get these materials, put in lagoons, and then also spread to the farmland.
Okay. Just to follow up on your first question, who would actually be doing the testing?
So
would it be the third party doing the testing, or would it be Aqua, let's say, in this case?
So I think,
through your worship. So I know it would be Aqua that would be doing the testing.
Okay.
Right now with LC Craig, we have our biosolids tanks that's there. So we sample that once a month to a third party accredited lab. So we'd be probably doing the same thing. We wouldn't just rely on, a third party partner to come in and do our testing, especially when it comes to land application as well. They would want that data. So the biosolids or the cake that's coming in would be tested. Then, of course, before it's going to be land applied, it's going to be tested again as well.
Perfect. Thanks, Ryan.
And through your worship, that's why we are proposing this unique model where we will not be working for the private company, or we will be working for you, so that there's this de-alienation of roles and responsibility. Like Rod said, if we have a third party operating the plant itself, we learning from Sarnia again, right? There was no checks and balances. So that's why in this case, we want to operate this lagoon if this model goes ahead, so that we can keep a check on what's coming in, what quality is coming in, is it being done based on what it said it's being done. And we have a reputation of, having 99% and above compliance with. So that's what we're interested to support, explore this model for the municipality.
Okay. Other questions? Councillor Keel.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. The testing of the matter that's on the truck, is that before the truck is loaded or after the truck is loaded? I guess the point I'm trying to make is, would there be a rapid test on site as to whether this material is acceptable or whether it's not?
Through your worship to Councillor Keel, it would be tested on site to ensure that it is domestic waste, that's not going to be from, a restaurant or food or something that's heavy in BOD. So they could test it in, wherever the other location is, but that travel is unknown. So to me, it has to be tested on site to ensure that it is domestic waste. And if it sits for 3 or 4 months, again, before it's going to be land applied, it has to be tested once again to ensure that it fits that NASM plan for that land application.
Now, again, just to add on that, our preference is definitely municipal waste, like the wastewater treatment plant laws. But again, to trigger some biological, treatment and accelerate some of process, there might be occurrences. We might bring in a little bit of heavy material like avatar material, and so not a lot of volume. Again, Aaron is a technical expert, and we will flush out those details of how much our lagoon can handle, concerning all the surroundings and other things. But our plan through Jaden is we're not seeking a blanket approval today. We will come back to the council in different stages of this exploration process, and then seek approvals of every state. And council can tell us to stop at any point throughout this process. So our next stage is we want to go to the ministry and tell them, what do you think about this one? Because this is a very innovative model. And Sarnia tried it in a very different way, and we are trying to do it in a little bit different way. So Aaron came from ministry after working 13 years. So our belief is that the ministry will be very much interested, because as I say, it's a provincial challenge. It's not just town of Middlesex, municipality of Middlesex challenge. So we are seeking of just to do some steps so that we can come up with more information for the council to consider in this proposal.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Hodgins and then Councilman Dawson.
Through you, Mayor Rob, and I'll try to choose my words carefully here so I don't go over the borderline of what I can say. But no, I think we've heard say that there's one company that's offering the service. Is there any other? I mean, is there many other companies that we could look at as well?
And thanks for asking that. Sorry. So from the service perspective, the material, bringing in the material and then taking it out to the farmers, there are a few other companies. But from the investment perspective, we haven't found other companies that have shown interest, because putting money is a different deal. This company has shown interest, but that's why in the report I recommended to Jaden is we can go and seek formally if others are interested too. That option is always available, but based on informal conversation, those other parties haven't shown any interest to put the money in this model where there's a less burden on the municipality to come up with the cash.
Okay. Councilor Pinellas. Yeah, Councilor Pinellas.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. You touched on something that piqued my curiosity when you discussed or mentioned the MOE. Currently, the municipality is responsible to the MOE for those lagoons. How will that responsibility evolve if we enter into a partnership with your organization? Will you then assume some degree of responsibility for the lagoons with the MOE?
So that's something we're going to explore with the MOE. Again, we and Aaron, jump in if I'm misstating this. We are assuming it will be nothing similar to how we operate the wastewater treatment plant today. The municipality still is a legal owner of the permit. Correct me, Rod. We operate the system on your behalf, and we are responsible to do the functions accordingly. Again, if we go with 25-year long-term lease on this model with third party, it's a really long duration. So how does those legal responsibility trickle in? It will be all defined in contracts. But again, that's one of the top of the question we're going to ask the MECP is what are the options available, and how where the legal liability sits, right? So if something goes wrong, who's going to be responsible? Obviously, as an operator, we would be responsible for certain aspects, but also the third party will be responsible for certain aspects. So those will have to be flushed out. We might have to take some advice from legal counsels involved between all parties. But I think that's a question we will also be asking MECP is what is the advisable route we should take.
Thank you.
Okay. Other questions? No other questions at this time. I will say, I think it'll be interesting to hear what the ministry has to say, because this is so unique, so different of an idea. And I'm going to ask you, do you believe that we can make this work? Like, we're sitting here at council and you from Aqua are the experts, and we're relying on staff and on yous to, can we make this work? Do you believe that this is a good project? Because I do see some benefits for it. Because the other part of my question was, we do have to do the lagoons regardless, right? Even if we build a new plant, we have to drain the lagoons or so, okay. So
So I
that
think-
would be my question.
I think the question, so again, we are here on behalf of municipality.
Right.
So just to be clear, we are not coming on behalf of the third party.
Mhm.
And we have been a partners with the municipality for many, many years. So we, like, Mayor Brian, like you said, we understand the challenges that the municipality is facing. And the first and foremost is the lagoon. It's up to the neck. So today, if we don't do anything, you are going to run out of the treatment capacity. You will have to stop taking the sludge coming, wastewater coming from residential household. There's no other option. So something has to be done with the lagoon, and there's a cost to that. So, and we have been exploring where to fund that cost from. And when this proposal came through on surface to start with, it is an interesting proposal. It takes a little bit pressure of that cost from the municipality. And it also gives us the much needed treatment capacity available. Now, I know we all know the municipality has already embarked on a journey to create or construct a new mechanical plant. And we are in a state of seeking more funding for that project too. Let's say tomorrow we hit the jackpot, we got the money to build that new mechanical plant. It's still going to be a number of years until that plant is ready. So from the way I see the things, and my team sees the thing is, this is a good opportunity to explore, to have the treatment capacity available. Maybe if we do this in a little bit better way, maybe we can open, I don't know how many houses, but maybe a little bit increase, we can cater that increase in demand. But for now, status quo is to keep that treatment plant available for an X number of years, maybe 5 years, maybe 7 years, and without spending a lot of money on your part. And then easily transform into a new treatment plant when it's ready, because as we understand, the lagoon is being considered as a part of the new plant for the storage. So that offsets some of the cost to build the concrete tanks. So now the more important question you ask is, can we make it work? I think, we have upper hand, definitely, because you are the owner of the infrastructure. But the negotiations will have to be done, because we are not, again, depending on how much the municipality can put, right? Because at the end of the day, it's about, if we are telling the third party to put the 100% cost to this one, then our negotiating power might be a little bit weaker. But if we can come up with 25% or 50%, then we can bargain more. But again, model can work. And then there will be a lot of discussions about contracts and clauses and all these. So yeah, it can work. Again, how much is the council ready to take on? I think that's, we will have to discuss that as we go through this process.
Okay, thank you. Jaden.
Yeah, just to add to that question of can we make it work? I think maybe we don't know the answer yet. Like, it's really early in the process, right? Like, a third party has approached us and here's something that we think we can do, and it could potentially make money and have a benefit. But we are really early. Like, we haven't really got into those details, and maybe you see that in the proposal that was presented. Like, it's, it's so high level, and we just haven't assessed it as much yet. So we still have to go to the ministry, because there's a potential that we go to the ministry and, it gets shut down right there. Maybe they're not in favor of the model, and then it's not going to work. So I don't think we have an answer to that yet. I think we still have some fact finding to do and some exploring to do to see what the opportunities are. And that will be information that comes back to council at a later date. And it's probably going to take some time as well. But that's where I think we stand with respect to this.
Okay, thank you. And I asked a question because I have had the opportunity to sit in on the meeting with yous, and the rest of council hasn't. And I want you to know that I feel much better about this whole process when, is that me? No. When Aqua became involved, when you brought Aqua into it and you know, the professionals come in there because let's face it, I don't know the intricacies of doing this and that's not our expertise. So really appreciate that. And any other questions from council at this time?
And through your worship, I can just add that there's other opportunities, similar opportunities we are exploring and supporting other municipalities who are in a similar position in Eastern Ontario and in Windsor Essex area. And Aaron, and we think that because of the innovative nature of this model and addressing the key challenges in the province, we might be able to sell this to a funding agency to offset a little bit of, I mean, our objective is also like not take the private money, you know, much more, but offset that with the government funding if we can. So that's where our other option. And then through Jaden, we'll come back with more information in future dates.
Excellent. Thank you. No other questions? Okay, at this time, we have a recommendation, and that is that council direct staff to meet with the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks to review and discuss the feasibility of implementing a biosolids storage facility at the Park Hill Lagoon site. Your moved by Councillor Daigle, seconded by Deputy Mayor Hodgins. Any other discussion on it? In favor? Carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jaden. Next we have, it is passing of accounts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The report in front of you outlines the municipality's expenses for their period of December 31st through to January 25th, totaling $2,765,088.55. Before I open the floor to questions, I would like to share with members of council some of the questions that I received via email for the expenses. So the first question was in regards to our OPP services payment of over $80,000 every month. So the question is, what is the breakdown of this bill and what services do they actually provide? So the payment of $80,000 is our monthly amount, and it is for the OPP detachment staff performing municipal policing activities within municipality. The good news, as I presented at council last week or last meeting for the budget, that amount will be going from $84,388 monthly to $78,640 monthly. So that is the answer to that question. The next question that I received was in regards to the visa payment of just over $24,000, asking for a breakdown of what that has paid. Now it is substantially higher than usual. And the reason for that is because it includes $15,600 for vehicle registration for 2023. So that is the biggest portion of the visa payment this year. It also includes stuff like clothing allowances for the new year. There's still some staff recognition expenses included in that. And education, training, and conferences is also, because it's a new year, there are new conferences coming out. In the past, council has received summaries of what our visa payments were on a monthly basis. Moving forward, I will include those summaries to the AP report every time there is a visa payment, so council members will have all of the information from the get-go. Okay. Next question was in regards to the Carnegie Library. There's a payment of $10,000, and the question was, is this simply an in and out? Yes, it is. This is a donation that the Carnegie Library has received through us, and we are just forwarding the $10,000 to them.
I sent you the question, and the reason I sent the question is I was kind of curious as to why does it go through municipalities' books? Why doesn't it just go directly to them?
because through your worship, the Carnegie Library does not have the capabilities of supplying charitable donation receipts, and we do. So if they by making the payment to us, we can give the donor a charitable donation receipt for income
Well,
tax
thank you. Now I
purposes.
understand. Thank you.
You're welcome. The next question is in regards to the Elsa Craig Water Tower. The payment of $797,098.20. Is this the final amount for the tower? And I will ask the Jaden to answer that question, please.
That payment for the water tower was not the final payment. The reason it was such a large payment, it was the release of the 10% statutory holdback. So that's money that's held back on the project until it reaches substantial completion. There is a little bit of remaining work to be completed in the spring once the winter clears, seeding of the site, as well as addressing remaining deficiencies. And the value of uncompleted work is $117,000. So we'll look to get that wrapped up in the spring, and then I will let you know when that one's 100% done. Thank you.
And the last question that I received today is in regards to the payment made to Monteith and Brown. What is left owing for the master plan report? And I will ask the manager of recreation to provide the answer.
So with the recreation master plan, the amount of the contract was $62,512.50 plus HST. Currently, we have paid $30,787.57, which is 43.5%. It is milestone based. As you are aware, they have completed interviews with all members of council except one, which will be completed later this week. They will be coming to council hopefully March 1st to present the findings of that consultation. And then from there, probably 2 meetings after that, they will have a draft master plan for council to view, and then they will go through the open house. And as those steps, they meet those milestones, they will go towards 100% in terms of payment.
And now I open the floor to questions.
Questions, any other questions from council? That was, by the way, that was a great way to do it, actually. Questions sent in and then answering it to everybody. That was good. Other questions? Cut the check. Councilor Daigle. Move the recommendation on the report. Seconder. Councilor Nerda, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thank you. Committee reports. Let's do any committees wishing to report.
I would just like to make a comment that Estelle and myself, the treasurer, as treasurer myself, did receive an email from Salva Bayfield this week for the category 3 programs and what the cost would be to North Middlesex should we agree to pursue them. It's interesting. Now they're also proposing, they're going to come and talk to us at council, and they're going to propose a 4-year commitment. I asked that I felt that was a little long. I understand the rationale because of the term of council and whatnot, but given that it's the first time this is happening, we do have the flexibility to negotiate a shorter time frame should we wish. As I'm looking at the screen here now, I know the one that piqued my interest was education and outreach, which our share of that, because of our 11.77% apportionment, would be $9,291. Yet they don't seem to really do much outreach and education in North Middlesex. There's a great deal of it in Lucan Biddulph, certainly up in Clinton Way and up in that area, but very little here in North Middlesex. But if we agree to fund that category 3 service, we would be billed that amount regardless of what degree of service we actually receive. Okay, so it's something we can have to discuss about more in depth when it comes time to do the agreements, I suppose.
And I think the opportunity to talk to them directly, I assume it'll be Mr. Horner that will come and whoever.
Yeah, I believe it will be Mr. Horner and perhaps either Nathan or Kate. I'm not sure which.
But that would be a perfect time to ask, if we pay this money, what are we going to get for it? I think
Yes.
so.
Now, I don't know if would rest of council be interested in seeing these?
I was going to say is, could you forward that so that the rest of us have that info as well? That would be great.
Absolutely. I can forward the email to all of council.
That'd be great.
Thank you.
Bill's getting a little close. Okay, any other committees? Councillor Keel.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. On January 19th, I had two Zoom meetings, one with the Blue Water Recycling and one with Lake Huron Water Supply. Anyhow, with Lake Huron Water Supply, it was more of just going through business that had already been established with previous council. Ina DeVette is the chair of the board now for Lake Huron, and Blue Water Recycling. The Middlesex representatives for that are Dave Manders, Deputy Mayor, Luke Badolf, and Greg Wilsey, the Councillor of Strathroy. Anyhow, that is really all I have to report on that.
Okay, thank you. Any other committees? Councillor Irwin.
I wonder if I could ask a question to Councillor Kehoe on Blue Water Recycling.
Sure.
I'll
tell you what I know.
Thank you. So I do understand that within the next 3 years, we're moving to a different recycling system where it's producer pay. And has that been discussed in any detail yet in terms of?
Right now, Councillor Irwin, it was just a matter of introductions and getting our feet wet. We didn't get too involved into that. But I can certainly ask that question or put it to those that can.
Right. There'll be a shifting in onus of responsibility. I'm sure you're aware of that. And it will have some budget implications for us down the road.
There's actually, they are mentioning right now that just a slight increase in services to all municipalities, just due to the extensive costs with fuel and equipment right now. So anyhow, that is what I can answer. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other committees? See? Yeah, okay. Would you like to speak to that? Oh, sorry, that's right. It's Councillor, you were the slowest one to put your hand up. Councillor Canellison's the chair.
Didn't think anybody wanted to know. I mean, does anyone have any questions on the fire committee minutes?
Well, I think actually the chief brought forward the changes in the policies, and that was pretty much what was discussed, right? He just wanted to catch you off guard. That's it. Okay, let's move on to correspondence. First one is Catherine Windsor, Plan 204, Lot 91 Elsa Grade, request for entrance permit. And you see there's a letter there from the county engineer as well. The next one is from Stephen Clark, Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, plan to build 1.5 million homes over the next 10 years. He'll be a busy man. Municipal Property Assessment Corporation notice farm forestry exemption. It's on that, nothing on that. City of Kitchener request to pause implementation of Bill 23. Township Lanark Highlands resolution support Lanark County intimate partner violence and epidemic. And we filed that on January 18th. The last one is a Municipal Property Assessment Corp, Municipality of North Middlesex Assessment Change Summary. It's pretty self-explanatory, I guess. So we'll see what happens.
I found it interesting that farmland increased by 0.17%, whereas residential went up 1.25%. I found that interesting.
Yeah.
If I may, Mr. Mayor?
Yep.
What I found interesting is the farmland assessment represents 65% of the total assessment of the municipality. So that it's
yeah,
coming from the Ottawa area, this is very high.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Okay, other and deferred items. You'll see, is the third one the water tower? Are you going to speak to that? Okay, Jaden?
Okay, so council may recall that during its December 21st council meeting, there was an item added for staff to report back on for the Elsa Craig water tower lighting due to some concerns that were raised by members of the public. So staff reached out to the consulting engineer who completed the design and contract administration for this project to request some options for mitigating the lighting concerns. 4 options were prepared for the municipality's consideration as follows. Option 1 is to utilize the existing programmable timer that is on the lights. It's essentially a do nothing option as the lights are currently operated on the astronomic programmable timer. Option 2 they provided was to turn off some of the fixtures altogether. That would leave some of the lights on while turning the other lights off, therefore reducing the overall amount of light. The 3rd and 4th options involve installing a motion sensor or a series of motion sensors. Option 3 was to install a single motion sensor into the controls of the lights. There are some technical challenges with this option because it would require pulling new cables through the existing conduit that are filled with cables and wires. So that can be challenging. And the cost was identified as $7,500 for that one. And the 4th option was to integrate 1, 2, or 3 motion sensors to control the lights. These ones would be a little bit of a simpler installation because they'd be installed in line for those electrical circuits. So just a simpler installation. That's why the cost is actually cheaper to install 3 sensors versus the 1 sensor in option 3. So based on those options presented, staff's recommendation is proceed with option 4 to install 3 motion sensors at a cost of $6,000. This will allow the lights to be left off when the site's inactive and not being used, reducing the lighting levels in the area, and they'd only be turned on when there is activity happening on the site. And it's noted that the cost to install the motion sensors can be accommodated within the overall project budget, since the estimated final contract price is projected to come in under the original budgeted amount. So that's the report, and the recommendation is that council receive this report for information and that council direct staff to proceed with installing motion sensors to control lighting at the Elsa Craig Water Tower. Thank you.
Thank you, Jaden. Questions? No questions? What's your wish? You're making the motion? Seconded by Councilor Irwin. He lives right there. All in favor? Carry. Opposed? 1 opposed, 2 opposed. Okay, two opposed. It is carried. It is carried. Okay, communication, including county council. We haven't had a meeting since our last meeting. So there hasn't been a county council meeting. It is next Tuesday. I'm looking for other business here. We'll go with other business now, please. Councilor Keel.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. To all the members of council, last week I received a phone call from one of the executive members from the East William Optimus. Apparently there had been some damage done to the ladies' washroom door as an act of vandalism. With that, it has posed some challenges. Brandon has dispatched someone out to repair the door, and that's being looked after here right shortly. However, East Williams Optimist, they are interested in perhaps putting cameras in more for just security reasons and something that they could follow up if in the event there was any vandalism because of its secluded area and whatnot. So anyhow, they are just putting more or less getting their ducks lined up. And I said that I would bring this forward to council, that it will be coming. The only thing they wanted extra, and that would be to just pull the agreement that we have with East William Optimist and the municipality of North Middlesex, more just for review and just clarification as to the responsibilities of the two parties.
Oh, just to have a look at it?
Just to have a look at it. That's, yeah, it's more of a refresher. And
I'm looking to Brandon on that. That's no problem. Okay.
So I just want to bring that forward because I said I'd do that.
So are they asking us to put in the cameras?
In the cameras? Apparently what they want to look at too is the IT portion of it, as far as its recording ability. So apparently it can be done. They're just looking into it and we would do a cost share
Okay, so
between hardware and software.
if council wishes, maybe Brandon, you could talk with, reach out to the Optimist and see what this can work out.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is that agreeable to council that will go that way? Okay, all right, excellent. Other business? Councilor Daigle.
I was wondering if any of the other counselors had a wish that I have, and that is that emails can be forwarded to our phones. Right now, if I'm not near my iPad, I don't find out anything until I happen to go near my iPad. Whereas if I've got my phone, I get it right away and I can deal with it. I
So
would like to.
this is I just want to clarify, this is for your personal phone, right? Like it's not a.
Unless you're gonna give me a municipal phone, I mean, it has to
No.
be my personal phone.
No, but I just want to clarify. Okay, and I think someone else has the same issue. I think someone else has the same issue. And our policy right now, Estelle, can you speak to that, please?
We do have a policy going to the first meeting of the Policy Advisory Committee in that regard. With the migration to Outlook 365 that we've recently did on January 19th, it is very easy to do that. And because all of the information is stored virtually, there are less risks in regards to what's the word I'm looking for, to phishing, to security data. A policy will be coming. We are looking into it.
And we are meeting, policy committee is meeting in February. Okay. Because that has been brought up and it was noted to some people, and I think there might even be 3 people with that, but right now the policy does state that it doesn't go to private phones.
Correct.
That's what we have. Right.
Well, interesting enough, I was getting them until we had that migration to the new service, and then you guys
Well,
kicked me off.
So just so you know, me too. So, but I did get mine updated. So any other business? Any other business? Councilor Irwin.
Just a quick follow-up, your worship, to staff. We did discuss briefly the possibility of starting a staff report on urban design guidelines. And I know it's only been since the last meeting, but I don't know if there's been any development on that or consideration.
Through your worship, it was discussed at our senior management team meeting last week. And we are definitely looking into what can we do about it, for sure.
Okay. Anything else? Seeing nothing else, I think we're looking at bylaws. And after the bylaws, before we go to close, we're going to just take a 5-minute break. And then we'll have a chance to deal with some other things. So bylaws, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. There are a series of 6 bylaws on the agenda tonight, 4 of which have first, second, and third reading, and 2 of which have first and second reading only. In order, the bylaws are number 010/2023, amend schedule for actual costs, Henderson Drain. 011 of 2023, amend schedule for actual costs, Vandale McEwen Drain. 012 of 2023, Calistine Drain, first and second reading only. 013 of 2023, Cameron Drain, Branch E and Branch A, maintenance update, first and second reading only. Bylaw 014 of 2023, part of Dixon Jacoby Drain abandonment. And finally, the council proceedings bylaw 015 of 2023.
First and second reading. Councilor Keough. Deputy Mayor Hodgins, all in favor? And I would note that we do have one conflict on the 15-3. 15-4, I'm sorry, thank you. Third and final? Councilor Keough? Councilor Irwin was going to say, is it not that late? All in favor? Carried. All right, I would just move that we just take a 5-minute break.